So Mizuno ST200, yes, they make drivers too, and they're actually pretty good. Let's get right to it and talk about what they share. So all these different drivers are going to have a composite crown, just like every other manufacturer. That just gives them some weight that they save from the crown to then reposition different places in the club. Depending what model we talk about, they'll be positioning those slightly different, and that'll then influence where the center of gravity is in that club. They all have wave technology in the sole. It's very similar to, again, what a lot of the other manufacturers do. What this does is just simply allows the bottom of the club on low shots to flex, just helps keep your ball speeds a little bit higher. So let's talk about what actually separates each one of these different models, figure out which one might be best for you. And we're going to start with the standard ST200. So this model does have a weight in the back, but it is fixed from the factory. It's about 11.5 grams. So you don't have the adjustability that you may have in the ST200G. But what's cool about this model is it is actually the most forgiving of all three of these. Why that is, because having the weight as far back as it does gets the MOI really high. It's just a little bit under 5,000. So it won't be the most forgiving driver on the market, but it's going to be definitely the most forgiving of this line and definitely puts it above average. So if simply hitting the ball really straight is what you're after, the ST200 would be a good one to test out for you. Also, the center of gravity, or the sweet spot, pretty much in the middle of the face. So it doesn't have much of a bias one way or the other. If I had to say anything, it's maybe towards the heel, but you're talking like 0.5 millimeter, so call it center of the face would be our best example here. But what does happen though, as you add all the weight to the back of the club, it raises the MOI, also raises the CG. So we do find that with this particular model, the CG does sit a little bit more above center relative to, say, your ST200G with the weight in the front. So it could be a little bit higher spinning. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but if that forgiveness is what you're after, you want to try this one out and maybe even go down a couple of degrees in loft as well too. One thing I'm a huge fan of though with the ST200 line, all the drivers, throw the X out, the ST200 and the ST200G, the stock shaft is 45 inches. So for most of you, it's still probably going to be a little bit too long, but it's way closer than what you're going to get if you just grabbed some of the other manufacturers off the shelf where it approaches 46 inches. Nobody needs a driver shaft that long if you're trying to hit it. Go find it and play it again. Shorter is always better. I'd still recommend going custom fit, but if you're going to just grab it off the rack, it's at least a good start for you. Let's move into the ST200G. Now this one's interesting for a number of reasons. So what you do have in this, two 11-gram weights that do allow you to move the weight from the front, which would be the lowest spin setting, all the way into the back, which would be the highest MOI, but also highest spin setting. Or what I like in this particular model is you can take them from one track and move into the other, and that gives you a lot of horizontal CG movement. So let's talk about this one in the horizontal CG movement, and then we'll talk about the front to back as well. So we have the red dot, which would be taking both of these weights, moving them into the toe. That moves the center of gravity about 3-4 millimeters to the toe side of the center of the club. So what that does then, if you were to hit a shot in the geometric center of the club, because of gear effect, you're going to get some twisting of the club. So if you are a golfer that does struggle with a hook, moving that CG, moving the weights into the toe is what you want to do. It can help to balance that out a little bit. We can do the exact opposite though. We can make this a really draw bias driver if we want to as well. Taking both of the weights, then moving them into the heel of the club would give us a sweet spot or a CG right around where that green dot is. So now we've moved a very equal amount, 3, maybe 4 millimeters to the heel side, and that does the exact opposite of what moving it to the toe does. Now if we hit it in the middle of the club, you'll get twisting simply in the opposite direction. The golf ball will want to rotate towards the sweet spot. Golf club counter rotates, and that can be a little bit to help turn your slice maybe into a fade, or if you hit a generally straight ball, it can be a little bit to give you that draw spin that you're looking for. So what I like about the ST200G, you have upwards of 8 millimeters of CG movement from toe into heel. Might not sound like a ton, but it's actually the most of any driver we've measured this year. And then interesting enough, the ST190G, which had some similar technology last year, it actually had the most last year, at about 7 millimeters. So they've taken technology that really worked well last year in the 190G and really just improved upon it, gave you even a few more millimeters of movement in the ST200G. So you can pretty much make this driver for anybody if you favor a fade, if you favor a draw, or if you want to favor one of those. This would be a good one to test out, gives you the most adjustability. If you're looking simply for the most forgiving driver, I wouldn't go with the 200G, moving the weight all the way in the back. It does raise the MOI, but it still doesn't get as high as it would in the 200. So forgiveness is what you want. 200 is the route to go. If max adjustability, especially from a heel toe point of view, is what you're looking for, I would go with the 200G. Or if you want just really low spin, then I would just take the weights and set them up like you have here. Move them all the way into the front. It keeps the ball flight bias very neutral, but it would move the center of gravity a little bit lower. It gets it to be very comparable to some of the other models we've talked about in the different manufacturers as well too. So all the way in the front, totally works. Both weights in the heel, both weights in the toe work great as well too. Moving into the back, you can do it. It just wouldn't be the route I would go 200. So the last model, this one's a little bit different compared to what they've done in the past. This is the 200X. And there's a couple of different features in this one that make it different. First and foremost, it's just really lightweight. The ST200, the 200G, they both weigh about 205 grams, which is even a little bit heavier than most different drivers from other manufacturers. The 200X comes in at about 195, so 10 grams lighter than both of these. It also comes in a longer shaft and a very light shaft. So this club is simply designed to swing as fast as possible. If you do hit in the middle of the face, that could result in some higher ball speeds, but again, typically longer can be a little bit harder to control, but if you're just looking for that one that goes really far, this would be a worthy one to test out. Now they do also talk about the 200X as a draw bias driver. Taking some measurements though, I really just don't see it. You can see it does have a very similar sized weight in the 200X to the 200. Again, it'll be a similar mass as well. And then it's got this really tiny weight in the heel as well too. And just from the testing, I don't think the size of that weight and the weight of that weight is enough to really move the CG much into the heel, which would be what you want if it was a true draw bias driver. If you look at the differences between both of these, you can see the CGs in a very similar location from a heel to toe perspective. It does sit a little bit lower in the 200X. So the 200X would probably be a little bit lower spinning than the 200. The only thing that's really any amount draw bias about the 200X is that the lie angle is 2 degrees more upright, more or less, than the 200 and the 200G. But when it comes to a driver, the lie angle of the club really isn't, because of the loft of the club, it really doesn't do a lot to change the face aim or to really change the ball flight to it. So I wouldn't look at the 200X as much of a draw bias driver. If you're looking for a draw bias driver, go back to your 200G, put both weights in the heel. If you're just looking for a driver that you can hit that one shot as far as possible, swing it as fast as possible, then that would be when I'd come to the 200X. It's got the 39 gram shaft, a little bit lighter, a little bit longer, and it's got the lightweight head. That can be the combination that can allow you to swing a little bit faster. Just know that does come with a caveat of maybe a little bit of a decline in your accuracy on average. The other interesting thing though about the 200X is that the MOI does stay pretty high. What can happen is as you make a club head lighter, the MOI just tends to go down. With the 200X, it does keep a pretty average MOI. Wouldn't call it a high MOI driver by any means, but it has an average MOI compared to some of the other manufacturers there as well too. So it's definitely one that is worth a test. You don't have to worry about any kind of accuracy because of MOI. The accuracy would just come from lightweight, longer shafts, tend to cause some of those problems. But the cool thing about this line, again, it does have something that fits everybody. Going back to your ST200, if max forgiveness is what you want, your 200G, if that max adjustability is what you're looking for, or if you're just trying to swing as fast as possible, I'd give the 200X a try. It's a little bit different than anything they've done in the past. I'll be interested to see how it does work out in the market in general. But Mizuno, not only do they make awesome irons, got some pretty cool drivers here as well too. Know a place where you can try them out, and if you want to learn anything about all the other drivers out there, take a look at our other videos.